Did you know that the tallest skyscraper in the world is in Dubai? Did you know that there's a skyscraper hotel in Dubai that has a balcony with a swimming pool on every floor? Did you know that in the Middle East, owls are considered symbols of destruction and ruin? Oh, and camels. Yeah, camels. They're awesome. I'm Michael Aran, and this is the Writer's Journey podcast, where you get a window into the life of a working science fiction and fantasy author. I'm on a mission to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I share my progress and discover what inspires my books and how I write them. You can find the show notes for today's podcast at michaelaran.com/podcast. This week, I'm taking you behind the scenes of my writing process. Hello, Anchor Nation, and welcome to Chapter 3 of the podcast. I teased in the first episode that the weeks where I talk about my behind-the-scenes process would be the most interesting weeks of the show. I hope this week lives up to that. I'm in the middle of research for my newest series, the Sound Mage Sonata. It's an urban fantasy with a male hero. I thought I would spend some time this week talking about what I'm researching. Now, before we go forward, I have to tell you that my last venture into urban fantasy didn't fare so well for me. In fact, my Magic Tracker series was the worst performing launch I've experienced in my career. Some people might even wonder why I'm even writing urban fantasy if my first venture into the genre was a flop. Because I don't give up, that's why. And book sales don't matter too much to me right now. As I've talked about before, I care more about a quality product and branding. I wanted to do something different with this new series though, and I wanted to break some new ground. My Sound Mage Sonata series is a different kind of story. Think urban fantasy meets the Arabian Nights and Prince of Persia. Instead of Chicago or London, this series takes place in a city inspired by Dubai. Instead of werewolves or vampires, there will be jinn and creatures inspired by Arabic folklore. Instead of being a wizard or a hunter, the hero is a sound mage, one who creates magic through sound. It's the most interesting and nuanced magic system I've created yet. The hero is a prince who witnesses the death of his family by a murderous jinn who ascends the throne and becomes a fearsome sultan. In a final act of love, his mother changes his appearance and casts the prince into the underbelly of the giant city, this time as a regular, powerless citizen. What happens next is complicated and not what you expect. This is not a story of revenge, but instead, redemption and humility. Whenever I'm researching for a new series, I gather as much as I can. I start a Pinterest board and I collect images and art, so I explored a lot of Arabic art. See the show notes for a link to my Pinterest board for the Sound Mage Sonata series. Something really cool about Arabic art, did you know that Arabic art focuses less on portraying people and more on portraying patterns and designs? You've probably seen the beautiful arabesques, those geometric designs that seem to repeat forever. The reason for this is because Muslims prefer to use art to show the indivisibility and infinite beauty and power of God. And as you know, it is a critical sin and a major offense to Muslims to depict the Prophet Muhammad in any kind of art or drawing. The French magazine Charlie Hebdo found that out the hard way a few years ago. Since the story is an urban fantasy, it won't be the tired Arabian Nights cliche that seems to be really overused. I wanted this story to be Middle East meets West, where both cultures coexist in their own kind of world. That led me down all kinds of fun rabbit holes, like the history of Dubai and Arabic customs, and even Arabian wildlife. I read this article a few nights ago called Birds of the Arabian Night, which was just absolutely fascinating. Did you know that falconry is a treasured sport in the United Arab Emirates? Seriously, it's a big deal. And did you know that camel racing is also a big deal there too? I watched a lot of YouTube documentaries on camels and camel racing, and they were amazing. Actually, I probably spent too much time watching camels. I think if I was ever going to be an animal in the animal kingdom, I would probably be a camel. They're just chill, man. Another thing I've been researching is music. I write to music a lot, and it's a critical part of my writing process, so I like to develop a playlist that I can listen to help me get into the spirit of the story. And when I'm writing, I listen to that playlist over and over and over, so that the playlist, in a way, the spirit of it, becomes also part of the story. I was a musician prior to being an author, and I have some pretty eclectic music tastes, so Middle Eastern music was already something I was familiar with. But I spent a lot of time listening to Middle Eastern hip-hop and a style of music that I think is called trip beat or trip step, which is electronic music with Arabic instruments. Some of the samples are really fun and catchy. I also started studying the storied history of Middle Eastern instruments, which are very different from our own. If you ever have some time, listen to the music of the oud, which is a Middle Eastern instrument similar to a lute, but it has a very unique sound, and when it's played, it's almost like listening to a storyteller. In fact, my main character in the Sound Mage Sonata's instrument of choice is an oud. I've also been reading the Quran, since no understanding of the Middle East is complete without understanding Islam. I've read parts of the Quran in the past, but not as deeply as I have now, and there's some pretty cool videos on YouTube from progressive Muslims on certain interpretations of certain passages in the Quran that made me think about Islam and God in a different way, and I'm grateful for those videos. I know that Islam can get a bad rap in the media, and I don't agree with everything it espouses, just like I don't agree with everything of my own religion, but reading some of the Quran has given me a new appreciation for the religion and its view of the world. Essentially, what I want to accomplish with this series is to use Eastern philosophy as the basis for the undercurrents of the story. Nothing political or controversial, but instead just a different way of seeing the world. I can't talk too much about this without some major spoilers, but every series I write has a different worldview, and I think that's what makes each of my series unique and distinct, and the Sound Mage Sonata series will be no different. So far, I've been soaking up as much as I can about life in the Middle East, how people talk, Arabic words, the Quran, nightlife, architecture, etc. You name it, I've been paying attention. I'm taking a big gamble featuring my next urban fantasy series in a Middle Eastern setting. It's unusual, and to my knowledge, it hasn't been done quite like this before. But if you know anything about me, I'm all about taking risks. Question for you guys listening. Does anyone listening to the show live in Dubai, or have you ever been there? And if you have, what's one fact about the city that outsiders looking from the outside in would never know? Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed the show, here are a couple ways to help a brother out. If you're listening on Anchor, favorite the show. If you're listening in your favorite podcast app of choice, do me a favor and write me a 5-star review and share this show with your friends. I also have a Patreon page, so check me out on Patreon and learn about all the different bonuses that you can receive as an official patron of the show. If you have a question, send me a voice message on Anchor and you just may hear it on the show. Next week, I'll be giving a writing update on how my current projects are going, and I'll be answering any questions that you guys have for me. Until then, I leave you with a quote. An investment in knowledge pays the best interest. Benjamin Franklin.